All right. My name is Billy Dooley with Coach Dooley's List, and I am here today at.
On the beautiful shores of Lake Oconee.
Yes, we are, and I'm really excited about this one. And before I forget, I always been reminded many times, if you enjoy these interviews, then please like and subscribe to the YouTube channel and follow us on all social media platforms. But again, we are on Lake Oconee today, and I'm with Roger Parham. Coach, I do appreciate it.
Good to see you, Billy. Dude.
Yes,
been a minute.
I'm excited about it. The boys are up there. If you hear anything in the background, the boys are in the pool. They're screaming.
They're screaming right now. They're having a good time.
We're just hoping it goes well. So,
that's right.
So, Coach, we always, again, I appreciate you having us, and we always start off just, for those who may not know you, I know it's hard.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Just tell everybody kind of your coaching journey, where you've been, and how you ended up retired on the beautiful shores of Lake Oconee.
That's exactly right. Well, I first started out coaching college ball. I had no intentions of going to the high school ranks or anything like that. And I started out at Augusta College, which now, of course, is Augusta State University. But back then it was Augusta College, and I worked for a guy named Skip Fight. And just a great guy, still a dear friend of mine. And then I left there and went to work on my master's at Campbell University and worked with Mike Caldwell, former big leaguer, runner-up Cy Young and all that stuff, won a couple of World Series games, worked with him. And then Kelly and I got married, and I had an opportunity to come to high school. The college game, there was no money. Everybody thinks there's money in the college game, but when you're an assistant coach, there's camps and there's travel. But anyway, so I started at South Gwinnett High School. I was very, very fortunate. Coach Sawyer, who was my high school coach, and a matter of fact, I'm not sure what the angle is on your camera, but he lived across the cove for me.
Oh, really?
Right there, where the blue boat lift cover is. Yeah, he lived there for years and years and years. And so, of course, he's passed away in the last year or so. And so him and Miss Margie lived over there. So we were extremely close. And he got me in at South Gwinnett, and the principal at the time was Dolores Hendrick. And they didn't have a teaching spot at South, so I went to Norton Elementary with a wonderful lady named Nancy Samples, which now I believe is Nancy Hammond. She's actually the mayor of Duluth. Yes. B.B. Harris was her daddy, which, of course, I believe there's a school named after him.
Elementary school, yep.
And so that's how I started. And started coaching baseball there at the high school level, and coach gave me tons of responsibility. And then fortunately, after a year or two, 3 there, I had an opportunity to take over the softball program, which was always interesting, Billy, in the fact that it seemed like everywhere I went, it's not that it was a crisis or anything, but I was taking over a situation I kind of had to handle with soft hands. You know what I'm saying? And South Gwinnett was that way, well, I was fortunate. I was surrounded by really, really good people: Mike Allison, Wayne Bryant, Paul Waters, Mike Tucker, and had a great booster club president, Rick Jarvis. And he was awesome. And we built a field back when all softball teams played at the recreation department. Mm-hmm. We built our own field, and so I started my softball journey there. And then, of course, when I got the head baseball job, I stepped away from softball just from a time standpoint. But that's where it started. And then, of course, we went from there to Mill Creek. And Mill Creek, I left 1 year and went to Gainesville, and then finished up at Brookwood and retired in the spring of 19.
Won a state championship at South Gwinnett when you built.
Won a state championship, sure did. And one of the things I kind of hang my hat on there from that standpoint, Billy, is I was fortunate enough whether I was the head coach or the assistant coach to take 3 different programs through the finals. Not just the final 8, but the actual final game.
Oh, yeah.
Just to be a part of that, there's a lot of variables that come into play with that. Number one, you got to have great players. Number two, you got to be surrounded by just wonderful coaches and great leadership within the program. And just right place, right time.
So. Oh yeah, and I was still in high school when you were when you were started at South Gwinnett. Mm-hmm. And I know we had some good battles, and you always had some really good players when we battled it out at Mill Creek.
Yeah.
So I could tell you, from my standpoint, what I always knew about your teams. But looking back on all your teams, running through practices and everything, what did you want your teams to be known for? If somebody played against Mill Creek or even South Gwinnett or anywhere that you've been, what were your teams known for?
Well, as I progressed in coaching, I learned so much from so many different people. But I wanted, at the end of the game, when we crossed the field, to shake hands. Whether we won or whether we lost, I wanted the opposing coach to shake my hand and go, "You freaking kids get after it." They get after it.
They did.
They play hard. They're aggressive. They're tenacious in how they go about their game plan. And I really wanted that. I wanted to be known for that. And I wanted them to be known for the little bitty things. backing bases, hitting cutoff men, doing all the little things that were necessary to be successful at a very, very high level. And you and I both came through at the same time where the standpoint of we were playing at 6A, 7A levels. We were playing the best of the best, and you really had, that was always the difference because everybody had good players,
right.
And so what made the difference was, were your cutoff men in the right place? Were you backing up bases like you were supposed to? Were you jabbing toward the middle of the field when the ball was going back to the pitcher? Were pitchers back in the plate? Were people just doing the little bitty things, throwing strike one? All those things.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I really wanted to build a program on.
No, and I can definitely attest to that your team's always got after it. We always had a lot of fun battles.
Mm-hmm.
So in all your years of coaching, couldn't go back to college or high school, softball, baseball, anything. What's one of your favorite stories from coaching? You're always great at telling stories. So what do you
there's
got?
so many of them I can't tell you.
Yes,
I can't tell you.
This is an adult show. Not for kids. That's why I click on YouTube. Right. But I know
that's exactly right. No, I look back at some of the days. Some of the great battles we had was with Mark Kimbrough. And one of my funniest stories, and this was me as an assistant, and I'm sure I have many more. And I think that question is really best for people I've worked with or players that have played for me because they can remember things. I know David Green, of course, at quarterback at Georgia, he always tells a story, and I can't tell it right now because I'd have to tell the kid's name. It wasn't anything bad. It was just the approach. And but I do remember Coach Sawyer. I was working for Coach Sawyer, or as Coach Sawyer always said, you don't work for me, you work with me. And which I always respected that a great deal. And I remember we were playing, I think it was Winderbarrow or something. And just the officiating was really subject, let's say. And so this young umpire looks at Coach Sawyer and he says, "Coach, another word out of you, I'm throwing you out of here." Well, Coach Sawyer said another word and the guy dumps it. Well, Coach Sawyer goes out on the field, and I'm not going to use the adjectives that Coach used, but he said, "You can't throw me off this field. I own it. My name's on it." And it was John B. Sawyer Field. And he said, "You can't throw me off this field. I built this field." And the umpire told him, okay, I won't throw you out.
Yes, that's awesome.
And then another funny story, we're playing Mark Kimbrough. And do you remember back in the days where everybody had the yellow coping across the top? It was like, oh my gosh.
The piping.
Yes.
If it hits it, it's a home run.
No, all this stuff. No, it's not. And so anyway, we hit one, or they hit one, and it hits off the yellow, and it comes back in. Well, Mark Kimbrough comes out, which is a dear friend, just love him dearly. And those of you that are watching this that know old coaches, you'll know Mark Kimbrough.
Yes.
And so the ball comes back into play, and Mark's screaming it's a home run. And so somewhere in the process, the umpires call it a ground rule double. Or they would, no, that's not exactly how it happened. They didn't call it a ground rule double. They said, yes, it is a home run. And Coach Sawyer, no, it's not. It's a ground rule triple. and Kimbrough said, ground rule triple. And he goes, yes, there's a such thing. Which still to this day, do I know whether or not there's a such thing as a ground rule triple.
We'll look it up there.
But the umpires put the guy at third just because of Coach Sawyer. So
if you say anything confident enough, you
can get it. You can absolutely get it. So yes, those are and we just had plenty. And as I reflect back on them, some of the moments that I hear my former players talk about, I don't even remember, but they do remember. And most of them have something to do with an interaction with an umpire.
Oh, yes. Well, listen, it's funny. You brought up Coach Kimbrough. When I first started coaching, I worked summers. I worked with David Dyer at North Hall.
That's right.
And we had a game over, we used to host the tournaments all the time, and we were over there. Long story short, I got upset about something. We had a kid walked home on ball 3, got tagged out to end the game. Right. And I threw my hat. And I'm 21 years old. Kimbrough just walked over the field, picked my hat up, and he goes, "You threw your hat?" And that was all he said. And that was all he had to say. And never again, I'm not going to say I didn't get upset, but it was one of those, it's like, and that's all for somebody that I looked up to. Right. That's all he had to say.
That's all he had to say.
You threw your hat. I went, so in all your years in coaching stuff, and I know, you probably had several assistants go on to become head coach and things. Right. What's one piece of advice you would give to somebody who thinks they want to become a head coach one day?
We get sent places for different reasons. All right. We have opportunities for different reasons. And I've always said this to young coaches. You go places to learn stuff, but there's two sides to that coin. You learn what to do, but you also learn what not to do.
Okay.
And I really think it's important to understand those things, how they meet towards your philosophy. Understand that when you do have that, a good friend of mine, Daddy Redshaw, he's the athletic director at Lowndes, used to be the head baseball coach. And he coined a great phrase one time. He said, the most difficult situations to deal with is when you don't understand, you don't understand.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
So you think you're ready to be a head coach, and then when you become a head coach, you're going to face things that you had no idea you were going to have to deal with. And I always tell young coaches, I said, being a head coach is 3 levels. You're either in a crisis, you're either coming out of a crisis, or you're getting ready to go into a crisis.
Yeah.
It's always that way. And there's something about being a head coach. Somebody is waiting in the shadows to steal your joy. I don't know who it is, but it's always, you may have a big win on a Tuesday night, and by the time you get back to your car, you got a text about your 21st player on a 20-man roster didn't get to play. And it steals your joy. You can't let that happen. All right. Probably the last thing is being a head coach. If you have a family, it's not your job, it's y'all's job. And your whole family has to be on board, because somebody's going to get left out at some point.
Oh, yeah.
And as you have kids, I just remember when my children are young now and they're in their 30s, I'd take them to the field and put them in a playpen while I mowed, or they'd be driving the golf cart around the field while I was mowing. It becomes a lifestyle for your entire family, and you have to understand that. And no job is not yours. When you're the head coach, every job is yours.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. And the first thing I think with listening to those two up there is, when you got a kid who's got a birthday in October.
That's right.
And that's playoff time. And
Casey's was October 14th. And I got reprimanded many times by my wife because I was on the phone with people at his birthday party trying to get scouting reports, getting ready to go to Columbus.
You have to. Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to get ready.
And I just have to put that phone down. And the biggest thing I had with it, Billy, no matter where I was as a head coach, and this is probably part of me having to get out of coaching. And when I stepped away, I knew I'd be like Coach Sawyer. When he stepped away, he stepped away. He was done. And a lot of people gave me some advice as regards to that. One was Mike Rickard. You may remember Coach Rickard. He ended up being the county athletic director in Gwinnett, and he passed away several years ago from colon cancer. But when he got sick and some of the things I dealt with health-wise, we reconnected, and this was right before I retired. And I'd ask him, I said, Coach, how do you know when it's time to retire? And he said, Rod, you love coaching, mowing the field, getting it looking great, don't you? He says, yeah. He says, one day that's going to become a chore. And he says, when the little things become a chore, that's when you know you need to step aside.
Yep.
And that was how it got. We had the place here at the lake, and my kids were doing their stuff, and but from a head coaching perspective, I know that because it's very difficult to say one thing, because there's so many things that come into play.
Oh, yeah.
And I really think you just have to, number one, understand lessons of learning what not to do may be more important than learning what to do. Because when you learn what not to do, you never waste time. You never waste time. And that's so important because time's so valuable now with these kids because they have so much going on.
Yep.
And Casey, my son, he's the head coach at Brookwood High School, been very successful. He's had great players, but he's got great assistant coaches too.
Mm-hmm.
And for you to be a successful head coach, you have got to surround yourself with wonderful people. Because you know as well as I do, Billy, when you become the head coach, you coach less than anybody on your staff. As far as day-to-day coaching.
Oh, yeah. A lot of times it's just overseeing things.
It's overseeing things. It's having to deal with this off the field and this on the field and this, that, and the other, rescheduling games and all the stuff you have to deal with as a head coach. You have to have really good assistants. And I was so fortunate from even when I was at Mill Creek, having Jennifer Maloney and Frank Turner and, Frank the Tank. I talked to him this weekend and
I lived with him for 3
You
years.
You did. Yeah. Dr. Tanner, as we like to say. He's doing so well. And Doug reflects on those times when Doug and I worked together at Mill Creek, and Doug made this statement to me. We still talk frequently. Of course, he's the head baseball coach at Prince after retiring from Gwinnett. But he made the comment. He goes, Raj, that first year you retired, you were done, and you had left and went to Gainesville. He goes, I didn't realize who was doing all those things until you left, like making sure the press box was open and make sure the table for the ticket taker. He said, and this is the thing, I don't mean to be long-winded, but when my son, Casey, when he first got his first job, he was working with Rick Howard at Lambert.
Mm-hmm.
And I just stayed out of it. And Casey's made his own way with zero influence from me. And just done a great job. But I'd ask Rick from time to time, hey, how's Casey doing? And he said, Raj, let me put it to you this way. He said, I got some assistant coaches that will come into my office and go, Coach, tires flat on 3-wheel. He said, Casey would come in and go, Coach, The tire was flat on the three-wheeler, but this Sunday I came up there and took it off, went and had it plugged, brought it back. Here's the receipt. I just get it back to me when you can.
Yep.
Or he would say, some of the assistants would come, Coach, we're out of diesel. Can't mow the grass, we're out of diesel. In case we come back and say, we were out of diesel, but I went and got 3 cans filled, and here's the receipt. Just give me the money when you can. You know what I'm saying? And if I could tell a young coach anything, be that person. You know what I'm saying? Be that person, because then your opportunities are just going to expand.
No, and I love what you said there, because you know Jason Campbell.
Yes. Oh, God, I love him to death.
He said just you know, just talking about being involved and doing all the things, and I had one coach that was talking about just be the head coach. Oh, Corey Mobbs said be the head coach of whatever your responsibility.
That's right.
Is,
That's
know,
right.
and do it.
That's
so,
right.
But I think what you said too is there are so many things, and you never realize how much there actually is.
No, it's just so much you don't understand. You don't understand until you actually get into it and go, oh my gosh, I got to deal with that today. You know, and I always used to tell my assistant coaches, Billy, I said, don't entertain any conversation with parents that have to do with discipline or playing time.
Yep.
Send those to me, because there's no reason for them to talk to you, because you're not going to have the end say anyway.
Yep.
And they like that, because they're not getting paid to deal with that. But on the other side of that, when you make that decision as a head coach that that's going to be your philosophy, okay, let's go. You know, and the older you get, the more you're able to deal with them, simply because when you're young, you just hadn't had the experience yet.
Oh yeah, no, that's for sure. And you can only learn it
by doing it.
Yep. And all we talk about all the responsibilities, and one of the big things with the idea behind Coach Dooley's list is hooking coaches up with good vendors who do what they say they're going to do. They get things on time and they're honest. You know, so who's somebody you've worked with over the years that you would love to shout out that always did a good job?
I tell you what, there's 3 people. There's 3 people that were really, really good to me. And I know the landscape of vendors has changed a little bit. We went more to the big box approach, or we've, you know, we're using the larger companies, okay, just because the pricing sometimes better. But I was always built around service, not necessarily pricing. All right, because you know how it was in Gwinnett. 90% of your budget was your booster club, so I didn't have to have any discretion on what I spent or who I spent it with. It wasn't like I was going for the low bid. And so I remember when I first started, I just loved working with Randy Coulter. I just really did. And his mom over at Coulter Sports. And I believe his brother's name was Steve. You know, I tell the story that we left the ballpark one day and we didn't have all of our equipment. Somebody had left my fungos. I couldn't hit infield, outfield. Well, I call Randy and he meets me at the field we're going to and has 2 fungos.
That's awesome.
You know what I'm saying? Or balls or whatever. And another person I loved working with was Steve Green. Steve Green, if he told you he was going to do something, it was going to happen.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? If he said, I'm going to have this on Tuesday, he had it on Tuesday. And if he didn't have it on Tuesday, you had enough faith to understand that it was out of his control. Right. Okay. And then when I went to Gainesville that year, I dealt with Nate Miller, which is brother, of course, Adam Miller, longtime teacher coach at Gainesville. And he worked for Hobbs Sporting Goods, and Nate was good. You know what I'm talking about? Everybody had their issues because so much of it's out of their control.
Right.
But if you can find a person, even with the big box people, that you can connect with, and they understand your program and they understand what you need, that's what I would do from a vendor standpoint. Somebody can meet your needs, not just on a seasonal basis, but literally make a phone call. You know?
Oh yeah, and I hear all the time, you know, from coaches, just like with everything you do, it's about relationships.
It's absolutely.
And when those people take the time to get to know what you want to do in your program, what you want, and get to know you, then they know, you know, and those are the people you can get to.
But see, that statement there is huge, even in your coaching. You got to build relationships with your players. If you build relationships, people used to always ask me, Rod, you coach baseball in the spring, softball in the fall. What's the difference between coaching girls and guys? And I said, you know, it is different. And I heard this, and I can't even remember. I want to say it was Debbie Ball that said this to me. But you remember Debbie, you know.
Everybody knows, well, not everybody knows Debbie. Everybody should know Debbie.
If you're in the softball world, you know Debbie Ball, because she's on the Mount Rushmore of high school coaches.
Debbie, if you watch this,
that's right.
If you text me when I come down to Columbus, I'm gonna take you out to lunch.
That's right. Debbie Ball's a good woman. And I want to say she was the one that said it, but she said, girls want to feel good to play well, boys want to play well to feel good. And that's a true statement.
Oh yeah.
And that is not a knock on either one. That's just saying, if you can build a girl up, she will run through a brick wall for you and build that relationship. When I say build relationships, how do you do that? She loses a grandmother. Stop by the nursing home. Stop by the funeral home.
Yep.
Let them know you care about them as an individual. Just really build those relationships. There's a young man that was in my program years ago at South Gwinnett. His name's Doug Beatty, and I'll call him out now. He owns part of an insurance company called Beatty and Breeze. And we have reconnected, and he had some tough struggles when he was at high school. And he said to this day, he says, Coach, you're one of the two people that's in my corner because you dealt with me as a person.
Right.
And that's not tooting my horn, but I was just like, guy's having a hard time.
Yeah.
I'm not going to browbeat him. You know what I'm saying? And love the kid to death. Love him to death. Now he's married, got 3 kids, comes to tailgate with us at Georgia, helped us sponsor our War Eagle games for Putnam County. But build those relationships, whether it's you're dealing with vendors, whether you're dealing with your assistant coaches, whether you're dealing, and understand you work with them, they don't work for you.
No, I love it.
You work together. You work together.
Well, listen, I could talk to you all day, but I'm actually worried that my kids are going to jump off.
And they may when you're
they
looking.
quit hollering, but Coach, always a pleasure.
Man,
Thanks for having us out
good to
today.
see you. Good to see you, man. It's always a pleasure. Please bring your family back down when you can stay a day or two.
Oh, we definitely.
We can sit on the dock, cook something, tell lies, and do all kinds of foolishness.
The lies are the best. Thank you, sir.
Absolutely.